Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 156 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to take on a little bit different subject. We're going to take a pause on our So You Want to Get Into Long Range Shooting, and we're going to talk about hits for clicks. So we spoke with a gentleman. We're going to have him on here for an interview. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. And I thought the concept really plays over into our shooting world. So I invited Richard back onto the podcast this morning before we get after a lot of hard work today. Good morning, Richard.
Morning, Jamie.
So it ought to be a great podcast. I hope this makes sense. And I think for us, trying to connect with new shooters and set the reality of what to expect, what type of accuracy, and separate what you see on the, I guess we would say, hits for clicks, and the things that you see and promoted compared to the reality of what it is. And so that way when you go out and you start shooting and you're not able to live up to the hype or the things that you see, you can know that there's a lot of BS and keep your expectations to the level that is acceptable for a marksmanship, not for clickmanship. So ought to be a good podcast. So without further ado, here we go. So before we get started, I do want to say thank you to a very special sponsor. We want to thank TriggerTech. TriggerTech has been with us since the beginning, and we really appreciate their support for the show. They are our great friends from the Canadian North. They make world-class triggers with two-stage, single-stage, different shoes. I mean, just really becoming a great world-class trigger manufacturer. What I like about them the best is they're clean, they're safe, and user-friendly for installation and adjustability. And we put them in all of our custom rifles here. So if you want to upgrade your rifle, upgrade your trigger, you can stop over to triggertech.com, triggertech.com. We'd also like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is the maker of fine cut rifle barrels. They are a family-owned and operated business out of the great state of Wisconsin. They offer a new program called kriegerdirect.com where you can log on, order your barrel, and have it in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you want it now, stop over to kriegerdirect.com. That's kriegerdirect.com. So me and Richard were talking a little bit before we started thinking about what we're going to do with this podcast, and we're going to continue on our series when we were talking about so you want to get into long-range shooting and try to give some good advice for getting people set up and all the information that they'll need and equipment, and really keep in mind that our hearts are in getting people to go out and enjoy what we do. It's embedded in our DNA. It's sharing our passion and love. I mean, the gift that we get every day is that we get to leave the range, sharing what we know to help somebody else enjoy what we love. And I can't think of a better job, and me and Richard are really just blessed that we get to, spend time with you and share the stuff with you. And the joy that we get is when somebody leaves the class and they're just super stoked. Like the hook is set and the shooting is in their blood. So, because Richard gets to go out and have dinner with them once or twice more than I do. We usually try to go out to dinner at least one night with everybody, but sometimes Richard will sneak out another night with them. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, normally only just because it's such a long distance from the range back to my house. So if I don't go for dinner first, I'll be eating late on. Yeah, I mean, I get a lot out of it. I think it's always fun once you get through that initial stage of any hobby. You get to the point where you want to sort of pass something along, right? And I think that's the point you and I have definitely got to. You got to it long time before I did. But I think it's interesting when you get to the point in any hobby where you have enough experience in it. You've done I'll say the 10,000 hours. I probably haven't done 10,000 hours, but you've got that 10,000 hours under your belt and you've got enough experience to have your PhD in shooting. You know what I mean? Or your PhD in teaching shooting, which you definitely have, Jamie, after all these years. But, you get to that point where you get to pass something on, and then the satisfaction from whatever it is transfers then from just a personal thing to you're transferring it to other people. And then you get extra feel goods from helping everybody else, which I think is a good thing,
Yeah, and it's almost as gratifying that if you could afford to do it for free, there are times you would. And I would say that there are times we take people to the range, that are struggling or that need help, and we probably don't charge what we should. Or, as far as, our passion is always rooted in, I guess, shooting first and the marksmanship part. So the reason we changed up our podcast on this one is I watched a video last night. Not going to dive into what it was because a little bit of controversy always surrounding all these videos where you get, civilian and government entities back and forth. And it was a documentary. And the one sniper in the documentary had made the comment about, he could shoot a dime at 300 yards. And, when I heard that and then combined with, I was actually talking with Dr. Matt Romello yesterday. He is Steve Romello's brother, and a podcast called Hunt Quietly, and big into trying to promote, as us as hunters, hunting responsibly. Try not to go overboard in what he, maybe I'm mischaracterizing it, but basically kills for clicks. And how that part of the industry is really devastating to not only hunters, but our industry. And then you got corporate America buying up lands. And then you got the glorification of what I would say is, and we're going to bring Dr. Romello on for the podcast here very shortly for an interview, so I don't want to go too heavy, and he can explain it way better than I can. But what was interesting is all the things that he's talking about and how it relates to his world in hunting really relates to our world in shooting and the expectations and what we would call as shoot for clicks or hits for clicks. You watch YouTube and you see some really crazy stuff on there. You see a lot of over-dramatized, unrealistic bars that they set, as well as some things that can leave a bad taste in people's mouths about our industry, just over-the-top stuff that's just absolutely ridiculous. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about on this podcast and bring Richard in this morning and talk about what new shooters should be expecting. You as new shooters or hunters in our industry, you're exposed to watch all of this and really getting out there and the videos that you'll watch, and all of a sudden when you go to the range and you're not performing that level, you feel that you're not a good shooter, or you get overhyped up on all these rifles that everybody's selling and all the BS advertising that goes along with it. Think about the optics in the last podcast that we talked about. Everything gets hyped up. Everything's hyper commercialized. Everything is oversold. Everything is Instagram and influenced out the behind, and anything and everything they can get it in. And it's all about getting the dollars out of your pocket. And in some ways, it's running our industry and it's running the expectations of new shooters. So, Richard, if you was to say like I would call BS on the guy saying that he could shoot a dime at 300 yards at will. I mean, now this is me talking as a shooter.
Well, we can all do it. It's like the guy that took 70 rounds to shoot a target at 2.5 miles, right? We can all shoot at something. The key is hitting it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm reminded recently, I shocked myself because I was shooting my rifle and I was doing the normal, sort of 7 rounds that we shoot, which is, we go out and we shoot, cold bore follow-up, and then we run the gauntlet on the steel a little bit. And one of it was at the end of class, not last weekend, but the week before. And I shot cold bore follow-up, 7, 6, 5, 4. And then the guy that was on the spotting scope said, go for a headshot at 4. And I absolutely nailed it in the middle. And I did the normal, because I don't brag, I did the normal, just blow the fingertips, rub on the chest. Look at that. I just did. But to be honest, I was kind of shocked myself that I was able to put it right in the middle of the headshot on the mini IPSC at 400. So, that's hitting the dime at that point. Could I do 2 in a row? Yeah, I probably would have still caught an edge, realistically, knowing my skill level. But can I shoot a dime at 300? I don't know. We shall try that.
So the concept, or what the guy was saying, and the reason I was sort of put back by it just a little bit, is that new shooters hear this stuff and they think, well, wow, oh my God. And is it possible? Yeah. Can you get lucky? There's always luck involved.
That's right.
But, our IPSC target's headshot is probably maybe 2 inches by 2 inches, and that's great shooting. 2 by 2. Yeah. But everybody knows the size of a dime. Yeah. I don't even know if our target dot, you'd be able to see it in a scope.
Well, here's something to help us visualize it. We have a 8-inch plate, I think, at 350 on the tree line, and that's got a hole in it now. Mm-hmm. So it's taken how many years for that hole to appear and for people to consistently hit the center of the 8-inch plate at 350.
Yeah.
And that's your dime, right? It's definitely a dime-sized hole now, because I was looking at it the other day when I was painting it. And, that's... Every once in a while, someone does actually thread that needle, and they'll put a 2.2 Creedmoor round or a 2.2 88 grain ELD match through the center there, and you can tell because there's no ring of the steel, and there's literally, you can catch the mud right behind the target is moving. So every once in a while, someone threads that needle, which is a dime-sized target, but it's not that consistent.
No, and regardless of your abilities, would I ever set out and say, like, for example, there's a shooting school that shoots golf balls at 1,000 yards. Now, granted, we shoot gallon water jugs, and there's always a little luck involved in all of this. And the last class, one gentleman hit the first one on the first shot. That's great shooting. But realistically, if we hung a golf ball up at 1,000 yards and we put enough rounds down range, somebody's going to hit it, right? But it doesn't qualify that person to say that they could hit a golf ball at every time. But if somebody filmed it and put it on YouTube, edited it, and then they were advertising brand whatever gun that's capable of doing this, and then you buy into that and buy the rifle, and then you realize that it's really hard to hit a golf ball at 1,000 yards, and you walk away beaten down a little bit.
Right.
So what I would like to talk about in this podcast and get Richard's opinion on is, do you think I would say hits for clicks, the influencers, the marketing power, how good it is to get people to spend money on their product, and people believe that the product is the key, and when it's subpar product, do you think when the shooters finally get that to the range, because we've seen it here, they come here and they got the rifle that they thought was the rifle, and it shoots terrible. Not only that, but there's a doubling down effect on how it beats down the shooter. So the shooter's thinking he has a rifle that he can shoot a dime at 300 yards, and then all of a sudden at 100, it's not going well. And you just watch the shooter deteriorate, and he'll shoot worse. And then we lose another shooter, just like we started the shooting school to get people staying and teaching them so they can go out and have fun. I think we're setting the bar so high and unrealistic that we're losing shooters because they say, well, I can't shoot like that. I'm terrible. Or they get equipment that's sold to shoot like that. So I guess, what are your thoughts on, I would say, hits for clicks, the marketing, the influencers, and just how good the industry is setting this unrealistic bar and selling people on things that maybe it's just a little bit of a lie to our industry?
Well, it's everything, right? It's not just our industry. It's not just, what we see in the shooters. It's every product out there is being, over, what's the correct word? Not glorified, but yeah. There's basically a lot of people who are taking the best of what it could be and only showing that and not showing the flip side of it.
That's I don't mean to interrupt you here, but that's a great way to put it. The best of what the product could be.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that's the product that you got or the level that you can shoot it at.
And, from the shooting perspective, there's two things there, right? Because on our best days, we know what level of accuracy we can achieve and be consistent with. And then on our worst days, it all goes to crapola, and we know that we're not really doing very well, and we know kind of why we're distracted. And ultimately, we get to the point in our shooting careers where we say we must have a rifle that can shoot better than we do, right? So that we know that whatever's going on, whatever we see downrange, it's more likely to be us than anything else. And the greatest disappointment we ever see is when someone actually starts shooting really, really well, and then their equipment lets them down. And it could be a scope, or it could be a rifle, or it could even be something as simple as a bipod. And then they start, people are always shocked when we change them over from a wax sand-filled bag over to a bunny ear bag, and suddenly the groups go, and it's a tiny little group, and they're like, oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah, it takes a little bit of experience to learn how to shoot with that kind of other bag you were using. Just shoot with this one for a little bit and get more used to it, and then you swap over. So there's a lot that influences the practical accuracy. And I think a lot of people look at some of the stuff on YouTube. I don't follow a lot of it on YouTube. But what I have seen on some of the sites is an overemphasis, in my opinion, this is just Richard's opinion, on taking huge, long shots on animals. And I don't think from my personal opinion, that's not an ethical shot most of the time. And when it's a windy situation and you're making a call from a mountainside into a valley, you're shooting at the animal. You're not really taking a fully educated shot at it. So I don't like that. I don't think that is really, it's not ethical.
And just like in the hunting world, and I always say that everybody has to make their own decision on what they want to do ethically. And I'm with Richard that know your limits and stay in them. And if the conditions are bad, sneak closer. I always say thank God for archery hunters because they've convinced us we can get within 25 yards of everything. But I think just like there is with the bad taste that stuff like that leaves to some in the hunting community, I think you'll see stuff like that on YouTube. Like, for example, people shooting inanimate objects, blowing them up and almost getting hurt. It makes the rest of the industry look bad, and it is all for clicks. It's all for enjoyment. And don't get me wrong, like we've produced outdoor videos and we've promoted varmint hunting. I'm not saying that we're not part of the YouTube world and we're not part of, we have a business and we try to show some of the things that we do and share our products. But there's a difference between that and hits for clicks, and how the marketing world has really set the bar so high that new shooters will struggle and then feel and walk away from our industry or our passion for shooting because they can't do what they see on TV. It's setting that bar so high. So we're going to invite Dr. Romello on to the podcast. We'd spoken a little bit yesterday, and we're going to talk about Hunt Quietly, and I think it's a great organization. We're doing more research on it, of course, and I'd like to really invite him onto the podcast to talk a little bit about what they're doing and just spending the time. Maybe we talked for maybe half an hour yesterday, and I just kept thinking like how much that applies to our shooting world, not just the hunting world. And so what I want to caution you out there on is if you're getting into our long-range shooting and you're getting in and you want to enjoy yourself, just take everything that you see, with a grain of salt and just be very cautious on the marketing part of it, because everybody thinks if you buy Air Jordans, you can jump like Michael Jordan. And it doesn't work that way. And I often feel for shooters that spend a lot of hard-earned money and wind up with basically a save queen that they're not enjoying shooting and not learning and growing as a shooter and not being able to go to do the things that they're laying in bed thinking about. Like, man, I'm so excited to go out and shoot something to 500 yards or ring steel at 1,000. And their experience when they get there is just awful. Are they going to continue doing it, or are they going to quit?
There's a couple of things to talk about within this whole framework here, which whether you like the thought of long-range shots or not, I think you can get into the situation where you're sort of, you set up maybe to view the land ahead of you, and then you see a suitable animal that meets the criteria of what you're hunting, and you're kind of like, well, if I don't take a shot at it now, it's going to disappear over there or disappear over there or whatever. I don't really have time to move. And I think a lot of people then just look to their experience of what they've seen, and maybe this is where YouTube influencers are influencing people's decisions, and they're making shots that probably they wouldn't have made if their father was stood beside them and they were still in their teen years, because he would put the hand on the shoulder and say, no, we're going to move closer, right? And I think that, yeah, you might get the animal. You might get the animal. You might get that one good shot. Maybe just staying there gives you more time to prepare. But I think we all know that we should probably be closer. And that's one of the things I used to like about bow hunting, by the way, because it wasn't how far, it was how close. Mm-hmm. And that was a great thing about, bow hunters are normally very ethical hunters because they're into close, not far. And so their shots are generally better, even though they have a weapon that's, some could argue, is less precision, but they generally hit the spot pretty darn well, and they tend to train a lot as well, or shoot a lot, I should say. So I think that using a rifle can lull you into a false sense of security as well, because it can get out and touch people at long distance. Now, if you're in a military world, yeah, you take that shot because your job is to kill the enemy, right? So you take the shot and you don't care if you just wing them, because that's as good as a hit. That's a hit's a hit, right? It's like shooting steel. A hit's a hit to some people. So some of us, hitting the middle of the steel is more important, but a hit's a hit. But when you're shooting animals and you're not doing it in that same situation as a soldier taking a shot at the enemy, then I think you owe it to the animal to creep a little further, use your camouflage, use the terrain, get a little closer and make sure it's a solid hit. Richard opinion.
And I think this is going in the right direction here. So 2 things. If you're going to go out and do this type of hunting, let's have the cameras turn on and never turn off for the hour and a half that led up to the shot. Show the fact that you picked out a rock left to the animal at the same distance and shot 4 sighters at it to get the wind right before you turned the cameras on and shot at the animal, and showing people that you can shoot animals that size at 900 yards. Can you do it? Yes, you can. Can a person starving to death do it? Probably a lot, right? I mean, if you're starving to death and the animal's at 900 yards, you're gonna throw lead at them, right? Yep. There's an old saying that said there's no luck involved till the lead starts flying, and in some ways that's true. But on the flip side of it is they only share what they want to show you. So we had a gunsmith here in Pennsylvania produce a video years ago. We're talking a long time ago, probably in the early 2000s. And he shared with me a lot of the videos. So he had access to a lot of land, and they were shooting deer at long range. And I watched the video as a hunter and as a shooter. And I was like, I called him up. I'm like, and not saying any names, I'm like, you cannot show this. I know that they knew some of the people that were producing all of these shows, and they were trying to get their own show. And I was like, you cannot show this. It was terrible. You're gut shooting deer at 800 yards, and they're all high-fiving, and that goes to that hunt quietly or hits for clicks and goes into our world. They were out there doing this because they saw it and they wanted to be part of it. And how many animals are hit that aren't shown? Like you see the success of this giant trophy that was harvested, but look at some of our famous rock stars that got in trouble for shooting a couple animals with no tags because they couldn't get the film. If you all know what I'm talking about, I'm not throwing any names out there, but people get in trouble for this stuff, but they're out there trying to produce a show. They don't get the hits. They don't get the film. Somebody forgets to hit so they do it again. And so they're under pressure, and that pressure leads, like anybody in business or in any type of situation, to make bad decisions because they have to accomplish a mission. And so to me, when you talk about stuff like that, you're showing people that. And I think the same thing happens in our shooting world. Like, we're hyper showing, like that guy saying that, yeah, I can put a bullet on a dime at 300 yards. You made that statement on a national televised, and I'm sure that he's capable if he tries it enough. But let's go out 5 days in a row, 1 shot each day, and how many times you're going to hit that dime?
Well, it's the Hollywood set.
It is the Hollywood set.
It's like I shot a Hollywood group the other week, right? It's like, oh, look, I shot a Hollywood group.
Oh, and it's just like we used to hang golf balls up at 300 just for giggles, for fun. And I would take my daughter out shooting her 223. And every once in a while, we'd crack a golf ball off, and it would just go flying through the air, and everybody would be whooping and hollering. But a golf ball's a hell of a lot bigger than a dime. Mm-hmm. And the wind, oh my God, a 1 mile an hour wind anywhere between you and 300 yards, you're off the dime.
Right.
You know?
We'll try this.
Yeah.
We'll sacrifice a whole 20 cents and
we'll
see,
put some times
see if we can punch a hole through.
Now, if we both
get in trouble with the Treasury Department, though.
Yeah, if we knock both dimes off, we'll have to eat our hat, right? I guess for me personally, I think when you see stuff like this, it discourages new shooters when they go out and they can't repeat what they see. It takes and starts crushing them. It makes them feel less than a marksman.
Okay, I got a question for you. So based off of how many years now? Coming in the 16th year of the shooting school and a wide range of experience, right? We've had complete novices, youngsters, older individuals, of which we're now falling into that group, I think. Very experienced shooters, military shooters, police, and then just recreational hunters and competitors. What is practical accuracy out of the gun? I mean, using the school rifles, because we know what kind of accuracy those guns are capable of achieving. What is practical shooter accuracy? I know I have an opinion. What's yours? Because you've got more experience with this than I do.
Half MOA.
You think it's that good?
I think that is the mark that makes you a great shooter.
Okay, okay, great shooter, yes, but I'm saying, what is practical accuracy?
I would say for the new shooter, keeping it under 3/4 consistently is really good. So my goal when I first started out was to be able to shoot with factory guns that were cleaned up now. We're talking Trude, lap lugs, cut crowned them, we bedded, everything we could do to it. My goal was always at 300 yards to be able to shoot an 1.5-inch group with it. And I thought that rifle was worth some salt, right? It had some bite to it. And then as I got older and started getting more into custom rifles, my goal was can I shoot an inch at 300 yards, an inch group, which is, again, it's hard to do. Or for factory guns, like it would be an inch group at 200, 1.5 at 300. And these were long-range varmint guns. And so if you're able to shoot an 1.5 at 300 yards, then at 900 yards, you should be able to shoot a 5-inch group, technically speaking, as a shooter. That's damn good shooting.
Right.
But one of the head ballisticians for the FBI who shoots hundreds of thousands of rounds said even the world's best shooters are probably half MOA shooters, and that most people cannot shoot consistently half MOA. And I thought that was a good analogy because I think he's right.
Yeah, so I would say the best shooters that we ever see are able to shoot 3/8. That's the best shooters, but they don't do it consistently. So they'll shoot 3/8 and then they'll shoot 5/8 and then they'll shoot half. So there they are. They're at the 1/2 inch, right? And then the new shooter, I think you get to the point where you sort of start out, with a, factory rifle, and it'll shoot an inch, it'll shoot 3/4 of an inch, and it'll be somewhere around there. And then you'll start doing some work to it, and it'll bring it down, and you'll get better as well if you're into it. You'll improve your own personal technique. So when you get to the point for the average new shooter, I think if you're shooting 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch and you're consistent, this is every time, not, I had a flyer, right? What's a flyer? It's still part of the group. It's not, I had a flyer. Don't do that to yourself because you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
You're absolutely kidding yourself. A flyer, if you're in the police world, you don't have flyers, right? You're not allowed to have flyers. That's why I think, what's their average? 57 yards or something for a police shoot?
Less than 100.
Right, because they want to make sure that they hit that spot that they're aiming at, and there is no flyers allowed in their game, right? Because you don't want to sit in court and say, sorry, Your Honor, I experienced a flyer that day, and that would be horrendous. It would be horrendous. So I think you have to include every single shot, and I think that's hard. And you've got to be you've got to be what's that phrase? You got to own it. So every shot that you precision fire has got to be a shot that you own, and you've got to record it. And if you think you're 3/4 of an inch shooter, then you're a 3/4 of an inch shooter, and you've got something to train towards. So a lot of people don't know this. We put up a dot drill at 100 at our shooting school. We tell people they're the size of peanut M&Ms, a little bit bigger than a regular, about a peanut M&M. It's a half minute. And you would be stunned on some guys, they'll start to clean them up, and then but every once in a while, we'll get a shooter that will consistently either nick or touch. Now, center to center, they're probably still not quite a half-minute shooter, right? They're on the edge, but they're still touching it. We would give it to them. Mm-hmm. But when they come off the line, if they have a bunch of hits on those dots, we call them, they're the little dot drill we put up, and we have them on our online shooting school if you want to see it there. But they're happy as can be. I mean, they're ecstatic that they're able to shoot like that. And they should be.
Yeah, and they should be. And it's a half minute to shoot those dots.
Yeah.
And so do most do it? Probably not. But we were talking about 3-shot and 5-shot groups. In the last class, the customer was asking, I'm like, shoot a 10-shot group. The law of averages will play itself out. If you only take 3 shots as your sample group, you're the best shooter in the world.
Right.
Now, I would love to say, sit down and shoot 3 10-shot groups and be honest with yourself. Because like you said, those random flyers for the 5-shot group will fill in with other shots.
They're not flyers. They're where you've changed your position, your grip, your pressure point, whatever it is, influencing the rifle. If
you're in denial that it's a flyer, then you're never going to learn to grow as a shooter. But when you shoot, it's like that BB gun. Do you remember at the fairs we had a BB gun? You had to shoot the red star out to get the prize. I don't know if you remember.
Must be an American thing.
It's an American thing. Well, did you notice you always start in the middle, then all of a sudden they start to go all over the place? Well, after you shoot 100 BBs, you start to see the actual thing. But if you took that flyer with that 5-shot group and you shot 15 more rounds at it, my guess is that flyer would be filled in with other shots around it. So challenge yourself. And I guess my point is, don't beat yourself up. If you can shoot an 1.5-inch group at 300 yards, I'm going to be honest. I'm impressed.
That is impressive.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going
Especially in the wind, and it's not just horizontal string, and that's an impressive shooter.
It is, and even at the shooting school, when we have our test on the last day, I go in 30 seconds so I can score it easy. So I'll give everybody like 9 30 seconds, 21 30 seconds, and I could probably put mics on it, but I try to make it so that the students can have some fun with it and they can compare their scores. But average is probably, I think the last class we had 21 and 23, and they were nice groups. They were still over half an inch for sure. They were beautiful, nice little groups.
In that particular test in the shooting school, we normally see someone shoot a half-inch group. Mm-hmm. So it's actually normally, I find it quite easy. It's normally a half-inch, 5/8 and 3/4, or it's a half-inch, 3/4 and 7/8.
Yeah, there we go.
That's I think what I remember.
The normal range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At 100 yards. So those are the kind of groups that people shoot. And of course, these are people who are actually feeling some stress, right? Because it's a friendly competition. So it would be like me and Jamie like doing a shoot off for Chinese food.
Yeah.
It's a friendly competition. We're both going to win in the end because we get Chinese food. So
yeah, and we score it. So we're putting tons of pressure on them that scored. But you will see shots where you get 3 or 4 beautiful and bang, that one goes out inch and a half. And you can see they're like, damn it. That's what you have to train to get past.
Right.
That's that obstacle in the road to turn you from good to great. But I guess what I would like to leave on an encouraging note, and I'll let Richard give some final thoughts as well, but don't set that gauntlet up to say, like that guy on TV last night, I can shoot a dime at 300 yards. Know your limits, learn where your limits are at, know how good of a shooter you really are, and then train to get better. Set the bar to something, hey, I want to consistently shoot. I want to be able to shoot an inch group at 200 yards. I mean, whatever your goal is, an inch and a half, at 300 or whatever that is. But if you fall into this, I got to shoot in the 2s and 3s every day, all day. I have watched thousands of people behind guns in between matches and all the years of shooting and going way back even into law enforcement. I'm telling you, there's not that many people that really do that all the time, unless it's a game like bench rest where they're on sandbags and 21-pound rifles and rifles with no recoil.
Right.
But don't beat yourself up. If you're going out and shooting an inch at 100 yards consistently, I always say you can shoot a 10-inch target at 1,000.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things here. Firstly, I don't think it's a good thing to be influenced by some of the influencers in all aspects of our life, and especially for the younger people who aren't quite so set in their ways. Influencers are not a positive thing as some people think they are, but that's a Richard opinion. But in the shooting world, I mean, I personally often, and I can show you in my data book, I mean, I'll fire my cold ball shot and my follow-up shot, and they will be touching and probably 1/8 of an inch apart. I can't shoot a 5-shot group that's probably better than half an inch. I mean, Jamie's probably seen me shoot 1 or 2, but generally I shoot to half an inch. Yeah. And that's how good I am. I think my rifle shoots better than that, but I'm a half-inch shooter, and I'm okay with that. I think that's great. It puts me probably in the top 20, 25%, definitely, probably top 20% of shooters. And I'm happy doing that. Now, can I shoot a dime at 300? I'm going to try. I actually am going to try because I think it's this is a fun thing to do, right? That's a fun challenge.
It is.
To say I can shoot a dime at 300 yards. Yeah, I would never say I can do it all the time, but I bet I can do it. But I wouldn't bet that I can hit that target every single time. Yeah. Like if I swap my cold ball shot out from being a 100-yard shot to being a dime on 300, there's no way I could do that.
Yeah, and then put 5 dimes up and give yourself 5 shots and see how many you get out of 5 shots.
No, I don't think so.
It's like this. Like we have Teslas that can drive themselves. They are better drivers than we are, right? And if you take a flight from California to Japan or China, you better hope that plane's on autopilot, because they have to stay within not just 1 degree, but 1/10 of 1/10 degree, or they're going to miss their target by hundreds of miles, right?
I'm going to have to look up. I saw an article not long ago where they had a full self-driving race car on the track, and it was lapping faster than the race car drivers were.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying is like, anytime humans get involved in it, we're always lagging, right? We can't take anything to what it's capable of. That's why planes fly on autopilot from Sydney, Australia to New York City.
Pilots get bored like regular people too.
Hey, what's bank left? So, but same thing with shooting. Like, I'm sure, like Rich was saying, the rifles can absolutely outshoot us all the time. It's just we're involved in it, and
we screw it up.
That's why bench race exists.
Yeah, we put pressure on the rifle in the wrong spot, and next thing we know,
or somebody starts ribbing you, giving you a hard time. So, our goal, we always want to encourage people. Like I never want to set the gauntlet out there to say that you don't deserve to be in our sport. Don't have fun with it. The whole reason I'm in the business anyway is to share what we do and encourage people to go out and do it, right? And so I just don't want people to get discouraged like that. Hunt quietly. I think maybe shoot quietly. I don't know what to say, but hits for clicks and all the expectations you see, I think set the bar so high that new shooters, when they can't live up to that, even though we think there's a lot of BS in it, they get discouraged. And God, they're just growing. I mean, it could take years and years to really become and shoot at that level. Before we finish up here, I do want to say a quick thank you to one last sponsor. I want to thank MDT. They are a maker of fine rifle chassis. They make everything from the new JAE 700, ACC Elite, Oryx, which I still say is one of the undersung heroes of really good replacement stocks. But they offer a lot of different makes and models for a lot of different makes and models of receivers as well. So whether it's custom or factory, there's a good chance they would have a stock that you could upgrade to. And for me, it's about getting the rifle to fit you perfectly. Adjustable length of pull, adjustable cheek piece, no sales pitch. If you're going to shoot long range, you got to get the rifle to fit you properly. And then sometimes that does require you to look at an aftermarket stock. MDT is a great option to look at. So if you want to learn more about MDT, you can stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com today. So my final thoughts, I think Richard's nailed it. I think half-minute shooter consistently impresses the daylights out of me every single time. Everybody gets lucky in punching some small groups in there, but and according to one of the lead ballisticians in the FBI, few people can actually hold to that bar. And I think he's right. And I think for me, go out and enjoy yourself. Know where you're at so you know when you improve.
Right. And starting shooters, if you're consistently 3/4 of an inch or better, you're doing great. Keep up the good work.
All right. So thank you so much, Richard, for taking the time to join us here. Richard was just laughing and we actually got into our exit music because we always tend to go over a little bit on time.
Yeah, we've been known to natter along for a while.
Yeah. It's a good thing that we don't sit and do this for 2 or 3 hours.
Never get anything done.
No. Well, go out and enjoy yourself. Set the bar, what you want to be able to shoot to and practice and train to it.
Set goals.
Yeah, set goals. And know your starting point. Take the test, shoot a 5 or 10 shot group a couple times. Hey, where am I at as a shooter? And then start setting yourself up for improvement.
Yeah, shoot the dot drill.
Yeah, shoot the dot drill. I'll tell you what we'll try to do here with this particular podcast is we'll throw up our dot drill.
At 300 yards.
Oh, no, not 300 yards, 100 yards. So
yeah, let's not do.
We'll attach our dot drill. You can download it and try it. This is one of the ones that we shoot at the school, so we'll attach it to this podcast. Or if you stop over to our website, it's wolfprecision.net. At the very bottom where you see the latest podcast, on our homepage, we'll try to put a link up for the dot drill. Maybe you can download it from there. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. We really appreciate it. We have some really cool interviews coming up, including with Dr. Romello. Really looking forward to that. We also have an interview coming up with IBI Barrels. They are a great Canadian company, world-class shooters. And I think with each, we'll bring this conversation up with them and talk to them about what their expectations are for themselves and what they think a real-world great shooter is. I think that's a common question we should be asking everybody. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us here at the show. My name is Jamie Dotson. And thank you, Richard, for taking the time to join us here.
Yep, fun as normal, Jamie.
And you were listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.